The following is a conversation with Samantha Buckley. Samantha is an American certified coach, has worked in a variety of industries, and most recently titled a book called Unsuck Yourself, The Guide to Designing a Life You Love. Tune in to hear more about her story. Sam, really appreciate you joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
Yep, totally happy to have you. As always, we talk to people with awesome backgrounds and awesome stories, and I'm sure you're going to have a lot of fun stuff to talk about. But just to start out, can you give a little bit about your background story?
Oh, well, how much time do we have? Because, I've got a lot of background story.
As much time as you need, Sam. We're here to conversate and talk about some cool stuff. So whatever you got to say what you got to say.
I think the story that I talk about the most, like it's in my book, um, is that I grew up like most people, I little dysfunctional. My mom was married 7 times. So that doesn't include boyfriends and everything. Adult child of an alcoholic, grew up in a nice, really nice neighborhood, but we were not the neighbors you wanted because we had total mayhem all the time. Anyway, got shook out of that kind of lifestyle in my early 20s. I was going down the same path as my mom, married an alcoholic, abusive, all that. And I just kind of went, whoa, okay, wait, this isn't the path. And so I did a whole bunch of personal work and did a whole bunch of business building and life building. And here I am now at 57 last week. I just turned 57 as,
Happy
and
birthday.
thanks. And just loving my life. So that's a
Awesome.
bit of the backstory. Grew up in Seattle, Washington.
Got it. Awesome. Great to hear. And I think that's a great backstory. And again, happy birthday. Every
Thanks.
year is a blessing. So wishing you at least 57 more years to say the
Oh,
least. But
okay. That's a bit much, but thanks for the nice wishes.
yeah, no problem. A little, I guess before I kind of get into the other things, wanted to talk about, there's actually, I think, a belief in Judaism that everyone should live to 120 years. Obviously that doesn't happen because people get sick and just, I don't want to say medicine isn't there. Medicine is great, but 120 is like a crazy age. That's, I say the same thing to her. And then she's always like, no, I need like another 20, 25 years and then I'm good. I don't want to live to be like too old.
No. I think I'll get just short of 90, maybe. We'll see how that goes.
All good. We gotta enjoy the time we have left. But
Yeah.
cool to hear about that, and wish you
Thanks.
only happiness and health moving forward. But
Thank
another
you.
thing that's cool in your story is that you've been fortunate enough to live. Well, I don't want to say fortunate or unfortunate. I don't know all the background, but you've lived in kind of a variety of places. Is there anything that
Cool
you've learned from
places.
like traveling so much, or kind of having a variety of backgrounds?
Yeah, for sure. So, what I don't write about too much, and I don't think I wrote about it in the book even, was my mom. Back to the mommy stuff. My mom actually moved me around quite a bit before I could make my own choices like that. So, I lived in Athens, Greece when I was just outside of Athens, Greece when I was in sixth grade. And then I lived in Mazatlan, Mexico when I was in ninth grade. And I lived in Alpine, Utah, in fifth and seventh grades. Um, and and then I decided when I met the love of my life in my early 30s to move to Canada. And then the story goes 7 years later, we moved to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. So that's a bit of all that. So to your question is there anything I've learned? Oh my goodness, people are people, right? Um, I love resort towns like Whistler, BC is where we lived. And it's interesting because what happens is, and I point this out because we can do this in our own communities or our own, environments, is that you end up meeting a lot of like-minded people,
Hmm.
right? You meet people that love to travel, or they love the mountains, or they love mountain biking or skiing, or, quality time with their families, or same, right? So that would be one of the greatest things I've learned, and I teach in my coaching is get yourself in an environment with like-minded people, right? And it's not luck. And yes, it is fortune. I'm very fortunate that I have been blessed with the discernment, making decisions and then following through on them.
Yep. Wouldn't you also say, I know there's an aspect of luck, or everyone will attribute some part of their success to just good fortune, but wouldn't you say that, I'm not a statistics expert here, but people who put themselves in a position or put themselves out with a positive attitude and put themselves in those uncomfortable situations are more likely to be quote unquote lucky or have things work out?
Well, it depends if they put themselves out in the middle of a, 16-lane highway, not so lucky, right?
Yep.
But if they stretch, it's important to stretch your comfort zone. It's like they've been talking about it for centuries. The magic is outside of your comfort zone. So it's a stretch. And yeah, it creates more greatness. I think luck is also fortunate, whatever. It's also a thought and a vibration. That's kind of the woo woo in me that says, gosh, this always happens to me. Yeah, because you're always in a crummy space or mind. You're thinking crummy thoughts, so you're just going to only see the crummy stuff, right?
Mhm.
If you stretch and live a life that's in alignment with your values and what you would love to have, I think that you have way better luck.
Onto the other stuff, and I'm happy that you mentioned or and you brought it up. You're working as a coach now, but prior to being a coach, you worked in a variety of fields. Is there anything that you've learned working in a variety of roles before really trying to pursue something in mentorship?
Yeah. I mean, you have to look at everything as a gift and a learning lesson. I mean, here's the thing. When I was 18 years old, I was a bill collector.
Hmm.
Who would think there'd be good in that? But I guarantee I've been able to help support and, give advice and that to people over the decades due to that, or how I live my life due to that. That's not a sexy job. It's not even look at me. I'm so proud of myself. I was 18. I needed a job. It paid really well and I was really good at it. Right. So, um, I write in the book about having climbed the corporate ladder, and it was really hard. And I was really grateful to have great leaders that saw in me what I didn't see in myself, and they
Hmm.
developed that in me. And it was hard. I mean, I tried to step down. Every month I would meet my boss, rest in peace, Donna. I would meet my boss for lunch in our monthly meeting, and I'd sit there and tears would well in my eyes. I try and step down. And thank goodness she saw this greatness in me, because I ended up going on to surpass even her role in the company,
Hmm.
and then went on to, these giant offices and all that kind of good stuff, which by the way was great once you get there. But once you get there, it's like been there, done that. Now what do I authentically want my life to look like?
Hmm.
Right.
Got it. Totally. I think it's a really fair point and awesome that you got to learn a lot of stuff prior to kind of becoming a coach. But like I mentioned, and kind of like I said before, ultimately you did decide to go into more this mentorship path. So what was really the transition like in your head, or the rationale between, going from more of an operational or kind of a corporate role to kind of trying to mentor folks within their lives and their roles?
Yeah. Well, I think um, I've always been a nurturer. Just you always want what you didn't have in my world. Why don't maybe that's not true, but I've always tried to raise people as I was raised professionally, um, and I was doing it for all these companies. I was making them profitable, and I was training and developing their salespeople and their counselors and their. I've always been in a business of emotional and intangible work. It's always had to be something. When I say always, I'm talking about when I started designing my career in my 20s. And now, again, I'm in my late 50s. So it was always about serving. Right. And so then I just got tired of working for other people. That's number one. Number
Sure.
two, I wanted to raise my children. I wanted to be present because I was a latchkey kid, right? So I wanted to be present with my children, and I wanted to work my own hours and do my own thing, be a good, like, happy marriage, all that kind of stuff. So the transition was tough because I went to school to become a coach. And my first year of coaching, I made $9,000, my first year of coaching. I used to make that in a couple of weeks. Right? So
Tough transition.
it was a tough position, but hey, you know what? I was loving my life and I got to achieve all I wanted.
Mhm.
right? So does that
So
answer it for you?
no, I think yeah, I think that's a fair point. And I think so it sounds like you were kind of in a mentorship role already within your companies, and that's something you were interested in exploring out of it and also just being able to dictate more of your hours. But I think that one of the latter things you brought up was a really good point in the sense that, when people decide to go out on their own or really do their own thing, I think in the beginning, and I forget if it's something called Parkinson's principle or Parkinson's law, it's something I actually saw a graph of earlier. But in the beginning, while you get to quote unquote dictate your own hours, realistically, it's all of your hours that you're putting into it. And
Right.
it's a struggle. It's a struggle in the beginning to learn a lot of it, for sure. But over time, as you get good, and because you're just dedicating so much time, over time, you're able to just, the things that used to take you 10 hours now take you 1 hour. And just because you're really good at those certain things, then you get to actually dictate a little more of your schedule. Does that resonate a little
Well,
bit?
yeah. Yeah. So it's really great. One of the great things about working in a sales environment in the past and in resorts and things like that is I'd already decided what I wanted my life to look like for the next couple of years, the free time freedom, the money freedom, and all that kind of good stuff. And I would constantly meet people on vacation, bless their hearts. They were on vacation, but they were so strapped to their desk or strapped to their property or strapped to, that I went virtual back in 2009. I started coaching on Skype and FaceTime and things like that. So this whole remote thing, was working for me way back when. Um, and the thing that I'll tell you that I've discovered is, yeah, we have to put a lot of time in the beginning for our businesses, but we were doing it for somebody else already.
Hmm.
Right? So here's the thing to really pay attention to for a lot of entrepreneurs or leaders and things like that is give your business the same attention you used to give your boss's business because a lot of people don't.
I think was great what you discussed around entrepreneurs. But one of the things that you've mentioned is in a few times, and happy to get into it now, is you wrote a book conveniently titled "Unsuck Yourself: The Guide to Designing a Life You Love." I know you've been able to learn a lot of lessons through kind of your career, and then also kind of your career later on becoming a coach. But what ultimately went into the decision to write a book between some of the biggest lessons that for people?
Um, the truth is I wanted to change more people's lives. I wanted
Fair.
to impact more people
Hmm.
um, than I could reach, and I wanted to be authentic. And so the design behind the book, which is funny because if you've read the book, you'd realize that I dropped out of high school twice and dropped out of college. So the fact that I wrote an international bestseller is kind of mind blowing, right?
Hmm.
Um, but it's not an unusual story. I think a lot of people could relate to it, and a lot of people want to get unstuck or unsucked.
Fair. Do you think, from all the things you wrote in your book, are there any main takeaways that you think readers should come away with after reading your book?
Yeah, you're going to live your life one of two ways, either by design or by default. If you're not taking conscious action in the direction of a life you'd love living, then you're living life by default. It's happening to you.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
that's the message.
I love the way that you put that, by design or by default. I think a lot of times, and me, this in my personal life, I'm not perfect at this either, but trying to improve. A lot of times I'm not saying that thinking is bad, but ultimately we think too much and don't act as much. So I think the toughest thing is maybe in business and in life is finding that optimal balance between thinking, but not overthinking and actually doing something tangible. So, while I don't think any of us are perfect, that's where we can strive to get to.
Well, okay, so to your point then, if you want to I'm going to give you another takeaway that an entire chapter in the book is dedicated to. It's do it imperfectly.
Hmm.
We're all afraid of making mistakes, fail forward. This is how we learn. I don't know about you, but I've learned my best lessons the hard way. I was a super stubborn person and a know-it-all, and it's like I know how to do that. Well, okay. But you could use help, right? But a lot of us are afraid to ask for help, or afraid to ask for guidance, and we may read all day long. You can read all the books in the world, but if you don't implement and you don't spend time taking action, then it's just, entertainment. It's not going to change your life.
Yep, I think that's a good point. Interesting that something I kind of thought I had, but awesome that you have that in your book, and definitely something that I'm sure a lot of people can take away from. So really great to hear about that. One of the things also wanted to discuss around your background, if you don't mind me asking, you've been fortunate enough to be in kind of an extended marriage for now. So, I'm
Yeah.
sure no marriage behind the scenes is totally easy, but the ones that last, I'm sure have some kind of great foundation. So, in your opinion, what do you think are some of the biggest keys to a successful marriage?
Don't marry an alcoholic. How about if I tell you what not to do? Because, don't marry an abuser. Don't marry someone you're going to try and fix and that you see potential in.
Hmm.
There's that. The successful part of it, yeah, I'm going on 24 years, right? And we have a blast. Marry someone that you have the same values with. One of
Hmm.
the questions that I asked my now husband before we ever had kids, before we ever got really serious or anything, I said, what comes first, the kids or me? And he said, the kids. I go, no, no. Naturally, the kids will always be most important. That's who you are. That's who I am. But
Hmm.
then we forget about each other and we're going to be with each other forever or not.
Hmm.
Right. And it's interesting because now that you say that, here we are right now at that stage where we just became empty nesters.
Oh,
Just
wow.
right? Like just became empty nesters this September. Thank God we nurtured our relationship and that we still love each other and we still entertain each other and make each other laugh and, value each other because it's just us now, right?
Hmm. Got it. I guess that's when you can, obviously raising a family is great, but when people become empty nesters, maybe that's the real test. But if all goes well, that's really when you get to start. I don't say enjoying your life again, but less pressure, less pressure around with kind of young kids running around.
Yeah, well, it's hard. If you really dig your kids, like we really dig our kids, we would keep them at home with us forever and ever. But,
Mhm.
apparently they want to have their life. So, um, yeah. But you have a lot of time in your hands when you become an empty nester. So hopefully people have put their focus into their marriage because we all have enough to go around.
Mhm.
We all have enough to go around. We have enough to put into our marriage, into our children, into our families, into our work,
Mhm.
right?
Got it. It's a fair point. I think great advice there, and wish you guys
Thanks.
only continued success and many, many more years of fun memories. But
Thanks.
now we're kind of at a new segment of the show. I kind of call it the Fast Five. Hopefully, the Fast and Furious doesn't come after me for copyright purposes. Just kind of conveniently name that. But ultimately, just a few personal questions I want to ask that I think will really give listeners some great insight into kind of some of the stuff that you would advise in yourself or advise to other people. So, first part of the segment that I wanted to ask was, you know, having this really long career and kind of building the life that you wanted to, if you could go back to your 10-year-old self, what piece of advice would you give to her?
You're going to be great. Uh, Take the scholarship for basketball that you're offered.
Got it. Awesome. That's great advice. And who knows, maybe you would have been a WNBA and been a WNBA coach by now too. You never know, but
Who knows? Who knows? I don't regret it. I'm just curious. So,
got it. I think that's a very fair piece of advice. All right. So if you could speak to anyone else in the past, be it a historical figure, dead or alive, is there anyone that you'd want to speak with?
um, no,
Wow.
no.
Trick answer.
I can get emotional and say my dad or my sister or things like that, but I
Mhm.
don't want to get all emotional about it. So,
Mhm.
no, no,
Fair.
I have a pretty clean slate with people.
Got it. Awesome. I think that's the trick answer, but also a really fair and awesome answer too. That's great to
Thanks.
hear. So another thing, I think you'll really like this question. We all have bucket lists. Is there anything that's really daring on your bucket list that you haven't gotten the chance to do and you want to try to achieve?
It's really shallow. So when you say achieve, it sounds kind of like really, really shallow.
Whatever you
Uh,
want to do. It's your
I
answer.
want I want to travel the world in one of those like suites that they have. Like forget just first class or business class. I want the ones that have the bedrooms.
Mhm.
My husband and I, that's on our bucket list. And don't get wrong, we could do it, but I want to be able to do it with the ease, as in not have to worry about the money.
Yeah, fair. When you say that, just curious, are you talking about like a yacht or just like one of those private jets?
Private, like, well, they have them in real jets now.
Got it. Okay.
Like,
Oh, I know.
yeah,
Got it. Like an Air Force One,
yeah.
but a Samantha Force One.
Oh, there you go. I'm going to coin that now, Samantha Force One.
Got it. Happy I could give you a nickname there. But no, awesome. I mean, that would be an awesome thing to cross off the bucket list. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of us are chasing fulfillment. And if you're able to do that, all the power to you.
Thanks. Well, I'm feeling, remember, I'm old. I'm 57 and I've been doing this life stuff for a long time. So I feel pretty fulfilled. I don't feel like if I got the diagnosis tomorrow, let's just say, and that sounds morbid, but I don't think that there's a lot that I would say, dang, I can't believe I put that off.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I try to live a life and model for my clients what designing your life really looks like. That's the tagline of my book, right? The
Yeah,
guide to designing a life you love. So I
fair.
pretty much, yeah, I'm hitting it.
Fair enough, and that's awesome. I
Thanks.
think a lot of us chase these crazy things, but I think a lot of us, the biggest thing we could do in our lives, not knowing how much time we have, is just try to be as fulfilled as we can. So that's what brings you fulfillment, and all the power to you, and best of luck with that. On that kind of note, as I mentioned, talking about your career, and as I've brought up multiple times, and right now you're kind of in the mentorship and kind of giving advice phase of your career. Is there any piece of advice that you've received in the past that has really led you down or kind of been really helpful to the path that you've taken?
Do it afraid. Do it afraid.
Hmm.
And to go back to, by the way, I've received a ton of advice because I believe in mentors. I too have a mentor and a coach, right? So um, they're just somebody at a different place in the ladder, right?
Hmm.
Do it afraid. Stop waiting for the perfect conditions. I'll do it when. Well, I can't, but I would. But take that out of your vocabulary and just lean in, right?
Hmm.
As long as no small children are going to be hurt, I'm pretty sure we can all lean in and take action. So that's great advice. Is just lean in, do it afraid, and take a little bit of action.
Got it. So don't be afraid to do the things that scare you.
Right. There's probably not a boogeyman inside the closet. Just go. And we're always afraid of what people think of us. Oh, well, what they're not paying attention. And if they did, they're going to forget about it by like 5 o'clock. So just go.
I think that's an awesome thing to say there. Awesome. Well, another
Thanks.
fun question here, and you might think this is a little quirky, but if you could have any superpower, be it flying, reading people's minds, X-ray vision, whatever have it, is there any superpower that you'd want to have and why?
Flying through the air scares me. So no, not flying. I don't like gossip, so I don't want to be invisible because I'd hate to hear the things that people say behind closed doors. Let me think.
Mhm.
I think my superpower would just be maybe if I could create peace in the world, that might be it.
It's a great question. I don't think people think of it as a traditional superpower, but now they should add it to their list of like, flying, seeing through walls, or mind reading, ability to make world peace. I think is a
Yeah,
great
I want
superpower.
that. That one's mine. So I invented it. So just kidding.
Put a Samantha copyright there, but that's
There
awesome.
you go.
No worries.
Samantha Force One and World
Samantha,
Peace.
yeah, Samantha Force One and Samantha World Peace. We'll have to speak to the copyright lawyer after the show. But awesome to stay there. So, last two questions I always like to ask. I think, in my opinion, I mean, I'm also biased, but I think the most important, you've been a great guest. You've mentioned a lot of the stuff that you've been up to in your life, some of the coaching stuff you've been up to, and the book that you wrote, which I'll include in the episode links if anyone wants to check it out. Definitely is a worthy read. But of everything that you've done, or kind of everything that you're going to do, is there anything that brings you pure happiness in life? And, what is it and why so?
My family thriving. And I when I say my family, I just mean the health of my husband and the wellness of my children and myself included. But that's my people being happy and healthy. That's everything to me.
Got it. I think it's an awesome answer and a beautiful answer. And I think as we get older, and some of the things that I've heard from older folks, just by age, not by mentality, they
Yeah,
said
yeah.
the most important thing they hear, or the most important thing in life, is kind of just your health. And if you have that, money comes and goes, but you hear of these awful stories of unfortunately people getting sick. So every day you're healthy and can move and breathe and do normal things. There's beauty in that.
Thank you. I bring this up to, I'm going to bring this up to you really quick. That helps me
Sure.
remember that. One, again, I'm getting old, right? And so and we're pretty active, my family. And trust me, there's stuff that happens that you just can't control. It's what it is. But living in a resort town for the last 23 years, resort towns, let me tell you what I see. People go buy a house, let's say in Cabo or whatever. And, oh, I'm going to retire there. And then boom, die of a heart attack. Don't wait. Do it now.
Hmm.
Do it now. So it's a yes and. I always tell people, like, well, should I do this or should I do that? Well, it's a yes and. So yes, do that and do that. You can really have it all. You really, really can.
Got it. Okay, it's an awesome happiness note there. And the last question, as
Yeah.
I said, you've mentioned a lot of really cool stuff, a lot of great advice, and seem to have lived an awesome life so far. Do you have a final word that you want to share, whether it's business advice, relationship advice, life advice? The stage is yours.
Yeah. I think the advice I want to give is, live your life by design. Stop waiting for conditions to change or circumstances to change. We were all created uh, with the ability to be special and unique. Even if you're a twin, you're different than your twin. We have different experiences and feelings and paths, and just lean in and get on the path and keep going.
Got it. That's an awesome final word, Samantha. And thanks so much for taking the time to go on the show.
Yeah, no, it was awesome.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Samantha Buckley. If you enjoyed the episode, rate the show on Spotify, drop a comment on YouTube, and subscribe.